All right, picking up where we were before, I just want to point out that we're starting to have something that looks like a map now, which is pretty cool. The next thing we want to do, though, is we want to address that issue that we had before, that we talked about in the content video, rather, of the necessity for insets because of scale issues. So the way that we do this in Map Publisher, create insets, is pretty cool. First, what you do is you create a completely new project template. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new one. It'll pop up here as a second window. And then once I'm there, I go down here by import and I click on this copy map objects from. And I'm going to copy everything that comes from that map I'm just making that I called Libertarian 3A. And I say OK. And the map shows up here, mostly in its entirety. And then I can zoom down on the area that I want to look at. So let's say the area that I really want to highlight is sort of that Anchorage and Wasilla area. And let me get it into the right position here just a little bit. What I do, and you can see that the layers up here are locked, and it doesn't matter. I can unlock them or lock them, but in that new layer right here, or what's layer 1, and I'm actually going to put it above the Alaska Precinct one so I can make sure I can see it. I want to draw a rectangle around the area I want as an inset. So I've clicked on the rectangle tool, and then I'm going to create this area as the inset and say OK. And it gives it a pretty big, thick color. It really isn't going to matter what it looks like or how big it is. But just to make it a little bit easier for me to see it, I'm going to get rid of the fill, and I'm going to turn that stroke down to something significantly less than this. I'm just going to call it 0.1, just so it's not quite as huge. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that that layer is selected and that I am on it. And I'm going to go down to the cropping function here and hit crop and go to crop to shape. And then I'm going to say all layers in the document, crop to that shape, and say OK. I'm going to treat them as if they're unlocked, and I'm going to crop the hidden layers. Doesn't matter really. Go ahead and do that. And voila, I have just what I need in that layer. That's that layer that I'm in, the precinct area layer down here. I'm going to unlock that, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to select all of that, just like that. And it will select all of this, and that will include all of the paths that are underneath it too, you can see. And I'm going to say edit and copy. I'm going to go back to the original file, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit to the area that I generally want to put it. And I'm going to say edit, paste. Yes, I want to do that. And there it is, right down there. Now, I didn't put the box around it because I had the box unlocked. You might have to put a new box around it. I'm just not going to worry that much about it. You'll see it's we. We want to make it bigger, so it's all still highlighted. I'm going to say Object Transform, and I'm going to transform the scale, and I'm going to make it bigger. And I'm going to make it 300% of its current size. And so now we have a much bigger layer. Maybe not quite big enough for me, so I'm going to transform it again. Makes it really big this time, maybe too big. But for the time being, that's actually just fine. I'm going to go ahead now and make sure it's highlighted, and I'm going to drag it. And you'll see I'll definitely need to put some sort of a neat line around it, some sort of a box, to make sure that that's there. And I've also, when I dragged it just there, I took it off the map a little bit. So I'll have to change the artboard as well. So, you may have to horse around a little bit with things like that, but I just wanted to give you the idea of how you do that. And so now you know how to do the inset. I want to show you how to do just a couple of other things as well. I want to show you how to create a legend, a scale, and a north arrow. So here we are back on this. Before I do anything else, I'm going to lock that layer. That's a blank layer right here. I'm actually going to change the background color just so it doesn't look quite so white. make sure that's clicked, and I'm going to go to the rectangle box over here. And behind it, I'm going to put in a rectangle. And I'm going to then go to the properties. You'll see that rectangle's right there and highlighted. And I'm going to give it some sort of a fill color. And you can choose what it is. You can make it sort of a yucky blue, but you can also, once you have selected that, you can go up to the colors right here and change it to whatever it is that you want it to be. I like mine being sort of a gray. And so while it's selected there, I'm actually going to drag the color window in, and I'm going to turn it from RGB to a grayscale and call that good right there. So now I've got that colored in the background. I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer now so I don't mess with it at all. So now we have got to go ahead and put in a scale and also a legend as well. So you do these things actually by creating new layers in the map views. And right now we just have the data that we brought in here. So it will automatically happen if you click that map thing to create the legend. You can just go down here and click the create legend. It will create that legend layer for you. And you can just say use the default one, that's fine. And then you can modify this significantly. You can add, change the font, you can change the title, you can change the border, you can do all sorts of different stuff with it. I'm going to just leave it simple as it is and say create. And then it's there. Everything else should be locked. So I should be able to select it and then move it to someplace where I want it to go. Oops, maybe I better zoom in here a little bit so I can make sure it's selected and movable. Okay. Oops, it won't let me move it for some reason. I'm having some problems here. Let's go back here and move it out in the middle of the Pacific someplace. Okay, let's zoom out again. Now, obviously, you're going to have to change things, and you might want to scale that up. It might be too small for you, whatever. But that is up to you to mess around with again. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and create a scale and a north arrow. And for this one, you are going to have to, again, create map views here. But this time around, you can just create your own map view and make sure that it's called a legend one. And say OK. And there it is, that layer 2 up there. I'm going to change this one to the scale bar, and I'm going to make a scale bar there. And then I can go down here with that scale bar highlighted, and I can click on the scale bar. And again, you can change the appearance significantly, but I'm not going to again. I'm just going to say OK. But this is something you'll want to modify, because when you look at it, you'll see that it's pretty huge and a little bit ugly again. So that's something you'll want to mess around with a little bit, change what it looks like. And now you can do the same thing with the arrow, north arrow as well. So let's go ahead and make a new layer in the Alaska election map. And I'm going to call this one north and say OK. And there's north. I'm going to lock that scale. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's all created. And now I'm going to add something to it. So what I want to add to it is actually a north symbol. And so now we have to find the symbol window and bring that in. So let me go ahead. I had to hunt around for my symbols a little bit, but if we click on symbol right here and we go to the library, we can go down to map symbols, and this is off the screen so you can't see it, and then go to other symbols, and then there's a whole place where you can choose north arrows. And so I'm just going to choose one of the north arrows here. I'll just make that one. And you'll see it's been added to my symbols. Now I can go ahead and add that where I want to in the map on the layer. To do that, to drop a symbol, if you haven't figured this out yet, you need to use something called the symbol sprayer tool. That's over here, You go here, I can just spray that symbol and it appears right here on the map. Now that north arrow is selected, and while it's selected, I'm going to go down again to the layout tools and I'm going to click on north arrow, and look what happens to the north arrow. It automatically aligns itself with north. And even if I drag this sucker someplace else, it will change it to the direction of north on the map, which is sort of a cool thing, I think, and something I like about Map Publisher. In addition to all of this, of course, you're going to want to put lines, and you're going to want to put titles, you're going to want to put a source, and you're going to want to put a bunch of other stuff. Just remember that when you do that, lock all of your other layers, create a new one, and you can call this one title or whatever you want to call it. And when you're in that title, you can click on the text box and then go in here and create a title. And of course, that title's awfully small right there. But if it is properly selected, as it is, you should be able to go to the properties over here and change it from 12 point to something a lot bigger than 12 point. I'm going to make it 72 point. In order to do that properly, though, what I need to do is actually zoom in and make sure that it is highlighted, which I didn't have. So use that tool to highlight it. There we go. And then go back to properties and change this to 72 points. And there it's much bigger and we can see it. And add all the other marginalia that you are going to need to, to create the map as you want it to look. Okay, let me zoom out now. We've got a title, we've got a legend, all these other things. They're not very good yet. There's lots of stuff that's needed, but this is how you're going to create the basics of the map. Hopefully you understand all this. Ultimately, you are going to export this map as a high-quality JPEG, and then you'll be good to go with this. So good luck and enjoy. Remember, you should do something completely different than what I've done, but there's so much data there, it should be pretty easy for you to figure out something fun to do.